Okay, great. And since we're in I'm in the United States, and your host is me, an American, we'll start precisely on time. And we did just hit 11 o'clock Los Angeles, 1 o'clock where I am, and 9 o'clock in the Holy Land. So we will begin today's webinar. Welcome everyone who is attending. Thank you so much for joining us today for reGeneration's third webinar in its speaker series. Our webinar today is titled Bridging the Divide, How to Speak and Connect Across the Divide that is challenging so many people, both in Israel, Palestine, in the Holy Land, as well as here in the United States. So a topic that's very relevant for all peoples. Also, today is Tuesday, April 25th, and it's Israel's Independence Day, Yom Ha'atzmaut. In its 75th year, Israeli society is at one of its most dramatic moments in its history. Hundreds of thousands are often in the street protesting against, and sometimes for, sweeping reforms that would undercut the Israeli Supreme Court and threaten its democracy. Jewish and Palestinian citizens of Israel are asking themselves in the most intense way imaginable what democracy is, what equality is, and what freedom is. At reGeneration, we believe in human rights for all, access to an education that heals for all, and peace for all. And when we talk about everyone, we really mean everyone. We mean everyone who lives between the Jordan River and the Mediterranean Sea. Jewish and Palestinian, religious and secular, Mizrahi and Ashkenazi, from the periphery to the center. But as Israel grapples with itself, fear and animosity threaten to push many people apart and farther from uniting in peace and equality. Like in the United States, Israelis are also deeply divided, and sometimes with hatred and long-term resentment, like here in the United States. This animosity has spread to the young in the Holy Land. High schools in Israel are a hotbed of racism. The most recent surveys show that more than 50% of Jewish high schoolers don't want to live next to Palestinian citizens of Israel, and sometimes even wish to deny them rights. Also, recent polling shows that a growing number of Palestinian youth in the West Bank support the formation of armed groups. This tension between Jews and Palestinians is extremely dangerous. Violence between the two people continues to reach the boiling point. But peace requires unity and the participation of the majority. So, how do we bridge these divides with people who may fear or oppose us, whether they be in Jews or Palestinians in the Holy Land, or Republicans and Democrats in the United States? How do we talk to them and build a mutual recognition of shared humanity, the mutual recognition that we're all depending on to move forward in peace on this planet? So today, I am thrilled to introduce our speakers. We have two internationally recognized conflict resolution experts who I know have much to say about the path to peace through encountering and sharing from the heart with the other. Itaf Awad, a Palestinian citizen of Israel, and Aura Hammer, a Jewish citizen of Israel, will talk to us today about how to fearlessly bridge cultural and political divides to do the essential work of peace building. These experts, they don't just talk the talk, they walk the walk, often leading facilitation groups, Jewish Palestinian dialogue groups. So I'm so honored to have them here with us today. Before we begin our conversation, I'm just going to share their backgrounds, their introductions, and then we'll jump into our discussion. So first, Itaf Awad is an international conflict resolution expert trained in Diwan, as it is known in Arabic, in English, the way of counsel, as well as capacitar. These are two conflict resolution modalities that enhance individual and collective well-being with deep roots in Arab culture. A Palestinian citizen of Israel, Itaf earned her master's degree in politics from the University of Haifa. And for the past 20 years, Itaf has facilitated hundreds of Diwan, the way of counsel, and capacitar, conflict resolution trainings for businesses, NGOs, educators, and private groups in the Middle East, Europe, and the United States. With Aura Hammer, we have here today, Itaf co-founded Diwan City, a grassroots organization teaching Diwan, the way of counsel, to Jewish and Palestinian residents of the Holy Land. I'm now so honored to introduce Aura Hammer. Aura discovered her passion for working for peace during the Second Intifada. A Jewish citizen of Israel, she began by co-founding a local grassroots coexistence group in the Galilee, where she lives, which led to facilitating and leading women's emotional resilience and peace activist groups, youth peace groups, and Jewish Palestinian dialogue groups. She founded the Upper Galilee team of the very famous Women Wage Peace movement and the Promoting Dialogue team. With Itaf Awad, Aura co-founded Diwan City, that grassroots organization that I just mentioned that teaches Diwan, the way of counsel, to Jewish and Palestinian residents of the Holy Land. Aura, we're so honored to have here today with us, with Itaf, envisions her life's work as helping to create a sustainable future for the next generations. So welcome, Itaf and Aura. We are so honored to have you here with us today and to be able to have this conversation with you. And welcome to all of our new attendees who just joined us. As a reminder, this conversation is being recorded, and I will email it to all of you after, and you can share it with your friends. It's going to be available on YouTube for people to view at any time. So before we talk about your expertise as international conflict resolution experts in how to bridge that cultural and political divide that is so prominent in the Holy Land and the United States, so that we can do the essential work of peace building, let's just talk a little bit about how you came into this work in your life's journey, in your life path. So how did you become a peace worker? What's your personal story of entering this work? Itaf, would you like to share first?
Hi, good evening. Good morning for some people. How I come? It's like it started in the Second Intifada in 2000. And believe me, the fear, it's lead me to this place. And in that time, we had like the Second Intifada, and Palestinian in Israel, they demonstrate, or they are support the Palestinian in the West Bank, and then the police come in and they shot like 13 young Palestinian from Israel. And it was in that day, it was like a holiday for the Jewish, and no media, no anything. It was like only radio in Arabic in Nazareth. And we was like just close to the radio and to hear the news. And I felt really fear and afraid. And also I afraid about my family and the people in the village, also especially my family. They want to get out also to demonstrate, and I didn't want them to get out because I afraid they will kill. And then it was after this day, it was in October 30, and then I give the kids, my nephew and nieces, I give them paper to draw their feeling. And they started to drawing, and I saw like they are drawing, it's really from their fear and also racism thing. And I afraid for them to lose their humanity. And then I started with organization, it's called Daughter for Peace, Bint Salam, but it was like we go like a demonstrate like every Friday, and after that, like I slowly started like with another groups, and then when I involved with the way of the council, it's take different way. Like I believe, like when I started with the way of the council, like I believe like the peace start in me, and then I started like to have the peace inside me first of all, because when I was go to the demonstration and angry, and I came home, I felt exhausting. I couldn't like continue. I have no energy. But when I started with the way of the council and other method, the capacitar, how the peace and start with me, with myself, and it's keep me in balance, and then I have the energy to continue also to struggle. And because I believe any human being in the world, they are deserve to live in peace and justice, doesn't matter color. Yeah, thank you. And I feel I take responsible to do something, not to waiting for the political or for the other to bring the peace for me. Like me, I take action rather than to waiting and to feel victim or stay at home and to cry, and just like to take action and to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Itaf, so much for sharing, how you entered this work after the second Intifada, and, became activated in peace work. And I also heard you say that peace starts with you. It starts from within, because you were going to the protests and then coming back, kind of exhausted, and physically exhausted and mentally exhausted. So I really look forward to talking to you guys in a moment about that question of how to start. Aura, I would love to hear how you started this journey as a peace worker in Israel.
Yeah, and hi everybody. It's wonderful to be here. I'm very excited. Itaf and Aura used to sitting on Zoom together, and we go into our council mode, our diwan mode usually, which is storytelling. And so I'm glad we started with these questions, because I think that our best way of communicating what we do is through our stories. So that's the perfect first question for me. Thanks. It makes me feel right at home. I moved to the Galilee in 1996, I believe, or 7. And I've been living in Tel Aviv before that. And one of the reasons that we liked the Galilee so much was the way everything worked in harmony, or so we thought. I'd lived in Jerusalem before that. In Jerusalem, I'd always felt a lot of pressure and tension between everybody, not just the Palestinians and the Jewish people, but like you said before, the Ashkenazi and the Mizrahi, and the religious and the non-religious. And when I moved to the Galilee, I've just felt so, I can breathe here, everything's in harmony. And then, like Itaf told about the second Intifada, when that came, I was in shock. I was living in a kibbutz. I was actually living in Rosh Pina and in Eastern Galilee. And my son was 6 years old. And suddenly everyone was afraid. It wasn't just that the Arabs were afraid, the Jews were afraid, the Arabs were afraid. Everybody who had used to be together all the time, they would go into each other's homes and villages. Suddenly nobody felt safe. And I said, this is crazy. I brought my son here because I want him to feel at home everywhere he goes and to live in peace with everyone. And suddenly is my son actually going to grow up hating Arabs? I can't deal with that. And I said, well, if I can't deal with it, I have to do something about it, very simply. And at the time I was working with some people, and their daughter named Elisheva, who was actually the younger sister of Aura Bala, who you spoke about, who was in one of your earlier webinars. So I was working at their parents' house. They have a lovely little goat farm. And Elisheva said, I have to do something also, and I'm going to start, it was a little summer camp. And we'll get the Jewish kids and the Arab kids from the neighbors together. And I really need some help. Will you help? And I found myself saying yes. And I think that was like you asked, what do you do if you want to be a peacemaker? First of all, just say yes. That was like the most important thing I ever did in my life, was to say yes to Elisheva. And that was the beginning. We started a group. She did the summer camp, and then she said, what do we do now? And we gathered some adults, and we said, but we don't really know how to do this. I was an architect at the time. I wasn't a peacemaker at all. I had no idea how to do any of these things. And then I heard about a group called Beyond Words. Nitzan Gordon was heading it, and then he said, who wants to come and learn how to facilitate women's peace groups with Jewish and Arab women in the gallery? And I said, oh, wow, okay. And I said yes again. And that's how I met Itaf. And the second year there, Itaf joined us as well. And I said, who is this amazing woman? At the time, Itaf was very different from she was today also. She was wearing suits, and she was working in the city hall of her town, Daburia. And she hadn't done the Hajj yet. She had hairstyles and everything. But she had this amazing fight in her, and this amazing belief, and that's a great sense of humor. And I said, I got to get to know this woman. And so we got to know each other, and we did many, many things together. But we learned counsel, and we found that this is where we feel most at home, because just telling our stories is learning how to tell them really, and listening to other people's stories. Well, for us, that's the first step. We create relationship through communication.
Oh.
So I'll save the rest for later.
Thank you, Aura. Thank you. It's wonderful hearing you share about how it started for you. It had origins on a goat farm in the Galilee, which is pretty beautiful. So could you just talk a little bit about what Diwan City does and what Council Diwan is? What is it that you're actually doing, and what have you done together?
Aura, you can start.
Me? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, council is something that began in the States back in the 80s with Jack Zimmerman, our dear, dear teacher, who now lives in Hawaii at the age of 90 something, I'm not quite sure. And basically what we do in council is we tell our stories, our personal stories, and we speak from the heart, and we listen from the heart, and we connect in this way. And when we learned this, we said, this is the most simple way for people to really get to know each other and to feel comfortable together and to create community together and to cross the divide, as you called it so aptly. And we did this in schools, and we did this with women's groups, and we did this with just people in general who are curious. And that was the basis for our work together. Of course, we each added on other things that we've learned and that we know, like Itaf does her capacitar, and I learned Play for Peace, which is connective games, if you've heard of it, and they're wonderful too. But it's something that we practice, and we've been doing it for 20 years now, and I still have a lot to learn. It's not something that it's not an instant recipe for peace, but because in our society, people have just forgotten how to connect. Everybody's busy with so many things, with their cell phones and with making a living and with defending themselves, that we just don't know how to do this anymore. And we don't know how to take that time, just take a breath and say, wow, here's a person in front of me.
Mhm.
Who is this person? How do I relate to them? How do I make them understand my story? How do I understand their story? And that's a big one. Itaf.
Yeah, and also the name is, we call it D1 city, and D1 city, it's like city, it's a grandmother. And D1, it's like also in Arabic, we have a council, in meaning in Arabic, D1. And when I sit in the first time in the council with Leon there in the Galilee, and me, I speak Arabic, and all the participants speak Hebrew, and the facilitator speak in English. I didn't understand the English well in that time, in 2003, but I felt everything. Like this way, it's remembering, like it's bring me to my roots. Just like I felt I was in this place, and really like the tears, it's come to my eyes, and I felt my grandma. During all this year, I forget, because I was very busy with to exist, to raise my family, and also to raise myself, and also I working as a director in the local council, and I looking for a high position, high salary, all this thing, and I forget the story with my grandma. And this is first time I reconnect with my roots, with my grandma. And I remember how my grandmother, she was sitting in the council with the man, and she was a healer and a midwife. And she was a really wise woman, and she was sitting in the council with the man. And as a kid, I was sitting beside her and just listening. And since this time, I started really to listen to my needs, and the way of the council. This way, it's changed all my life. And I get yearly pension from the local council, and I devote myself to this way, and also to really to have a bridge between people, and also to bring this way. I feel this way, because we are like talking from the heart and listening from the heart, and the way it's not hierarchy, and it's really for peace building, as like all of us in the same level, as a Palestinian and the Israeli. And if we are coming from this basic place, it's not no hierarchy. Usually it's like in many organizations here also in Israel, it's like the Israeli, they have the power, and they have but the way of council, they bring people in the same level. And also we have the safe container, and like build the trust, and all this is what I'm saying. Like we are, as a Palestinian and a Jewish, we need to build the trust, and like we are in the same boat. And if the boat have hole, really all of us, we are drawing, and this is what we need together to do it. And this is the way the One City bring this method, and also these tools to everybody. They say, yes, I want to be, I open my heart and to be there.
Thank you, Itaf.
Can I just add another word?
Please.
Yeah, also, I was just thinking today about these stories that we talk about, and how our society, every person has their own truth. And especially today, And you never said, no, my truth is the right truth. And you know, my truth is the right truth. And this is how people are constantly not finding what's really going on here. And the truth is just so much bigger than my truth or your truth or my history or your history. I was thinking, you know, the story about the elephant and the blind men. And it's like, you know, we each hold a little bit of the truth. And that's our story. But if we could possibly see all of the story, the whole circle, and accept that, yes, that's another part of the story, and it might not be my part, but it's another part of the story, and it's true. That would be a whole society. That would be a whole piece. That's our vision, really, is for people to be able to hold more than their own little piece of the story, to understand it and to work within that.
Thank you, Aura. Hearing you say that, and thank you, Itaf, for what you shared. But hearing what you just said, Aura, reminds me of a part from the Avot Jewish text, that he who is a wise man, he who listens to all people. And so I heard that also in what you were saying. And thank you, Itaf, for what you shared. And just to share with our attendees, Diwan City, to make sure everyone got it, at the beginning I said Diwan, another name for the way of counsel. The way of counsel, it's a group conflict resolution communication method and the way of counsel came out of Jack Zimmerman, California base, that has really influenced the world. And this conflict resolution method is used in many places, but it has origins in Arab culture, especially in Palestinian culture, and it was called Diwan. And so you're saying it's Diwan City, your grandmother's Diwan. Did I get that right, Itaf? Just to make sure everyone's understanding that this method of listening and sharing stories and hearing each other's truth, we're finding it in many cultures and also in Arab Palestinian. Did I get that right?
Yes.
Great. Well, one question that we had so far was, you mentioned that even the children feel hate for those who are different from me. Just reading a comment from the group. Even the children feel hate for those who are different from me. How do you begin to get the children to sit in a circle with one another? Did you start with children or mothers in Israel, Palestine when you're doing this work? And that, the title of this webinar was, how to bridge the divide. And in the United States, we like fast solutions. Give it to us in 3 bullet points. How can I talk to my Republican Trump uncle and not have it be a fight? And what I'm hearing you say is that it's creating a container of trust so that we can hear each other, and that it requires entering into that. So how do you even get people to enter into that space? How do you start with children or mothers, and thank you, Camille, for that question.
Want us to answer the question about the children? I can tell a story. In 2009, we did a project in Akko, and in that time, it was conflict between Akko. It's a city mixed. They live together, Jewish and Arab there, and it was like a Yom Kippur, and they had really conflict there. And also it was the time attack in Gaza, and Israeli attack Gaza, and we did counsel in the school with the children. What we did, we did in 2 schools, one Jewish and one Palestinian. The first, like a 10 meeting, just we do it separate, like a uninational, but 2 facilitator, each group, like a 2 facilitator, the same facilitator, they do it in the both schools, like we did in the Arab school, and then we move to the Jewish school as a uninational. And then after 10 meetings, we bring the kids together, even the Jewish, the kids and the Arab kids, they are learn Hebrew and they know a little bit Hebrew. But the Jewish kids, they didn't really start to learn Arabic, and also the second language, it's French or English, but for the Arab, the second language is Hebrew. And the kids, I was like witnessing that. It was like a 6th grade. They didn't need the language because they practiced the language of the heart. They was communicate, and even like it was that in the council, like we do delegation, and the Arab kids, they was delegate the council for the people in Gaza and to be safe, and the Jewish kids, they delegated for Gilad Shalit to he was in he was a prisoner in Gaza, and they and just really, and all in this time, many projects, it didn't exist. And this project, it's really exists. Even me, it was really hard for me also to do it. Like it was the attack in Gaza, and if some people they're familiar with the family, like 4 daughters, the daughter of the Dr. Abul Aish, they are killed, and in this attack in Gaza, and the daughter, they was with me in the peace camp in America in 2004, and I felt really very hard. Stayed with them in the hospital with the other injured, and I couldn't even, like when Aura, she's called me, I told her I couldn't meet you. I couldn't meet any Jewish people now, but because she understand me, and I could feel safe to say what I'm feeling. And then after like 1 week, we meet and we talk, and we continue to do what we are doing. And this is if I get the answer. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Shukran toda. Thank you. Aura, for you, how, answering that same question from a slightly different perspective, how do we start? So, we are in the United States watching information about Israel come up. We're reading about Itamar Ben-Gvir, about the Jewish Power Party. How do we start bridging the divide? Do we not even prioritize the farthest extreme? And this is relevant for then how we apply it in the United States. I mean, do we try to get Itamar Ben-Gvir in our circle and talk? Where do we start when there isn't a space yet for those kind of encounters?
Yeah, it's a hard question, and there aren't that many easy answers. I see many people today with the big protests that are happening now, that between the right and the left, and it's not the right and the left, it's the right and it's everything in the extreme right, pretty much is the feeling. Most people that I know are center and not even left, and they're finding themselves out in the streets. And and you can't always do it. Sometimes you have to wait for the right time. It's not always the right time. And first of all, awareness, just awareness of where I am, what I'm feeling, what others are going through. Do I feel safe enough to open my mouth or not? And if I don't, then I won't open my mouth. But to be authentic, that's first of all, is to be authentic with yourself. Do I want to tell my story? Do I feel safe telling my story? Can I hear this person? Like Itaf said, I can't talk to Aura at this time. And Aura felt it and knew and it was okay with me. I knew that if I can give her the space she needs, we can continue afterwards. And that might be where we are right now in the whole country. But on the other hand, what's going on in the world, it's not just America and Israel, the whole world is getting torn apart. The fabrics are being torn by the seams, We saw it like with Corona everywhere in the world, with COVID. And it seems to be getting worse. There's something going on in the world that's really big. Personally, I sometimes think it's like the patriarchy. It's having a hard time standing on its feet, and maybe it's time that women take over, but that's just a personal thing of mine. But to listen to people over the divide is really hard. I have a very large family. I'll take a minute. And my father was a rabbi. He was actually a human rights, and he was against the Vietnam War and many things like that. And I discovered how much I'm like him and how much I take after him in that sense. But he was much bigger. But my family was, even though we're a religious family, we went in many directions. You know, I have very left-wing family. I have very right-wing family that are actually settlers. And their kids grow up and go to those schools in the settler places. And something like that could tear our family apart if we let it. How do we talk to each other? And it's not easy. But we know that we're people, that we know that we're family. We know we honor each other and we respect each other. And I know that my sister's daughter, who lives out in Migron, which is way out there in Palestine, you know, I know she's, you know, a wonderful person, and these are her deep beliefs. Can I change her beliefs? Should I try to change her beliefs? But I believe that Palestine should be for the Palestinians. So what do we do here? So can we talk politics or can't we talk politics? But first we have to create a safe space for it. That's the first thing we have to do. And maybe it's a little bit easier to create a safe space because we're family. And maybe not. Maybe we say, okay, we want to stay family, so we won't talk politics at all. It's but first of all, to see each other's humanity, that's the biggest thing. And yes, Trump is a human being. Okay, and all of those people who believe in him are human beings. We might not understand their mindset, but the biggest thing is curiosity, be authentic curiosity. Can I really go to somebody who I don't understand and say, can I try to understand you? Without arguing with them? Can I really listen to their story, why they feel so upset about the Democrats or about the left wing or about the Arabs or about the Jews or about the religious or the ultra religious? For me, like, one of the hardest things is speaking with the ultra religious, because they won't talk. They close walls, they will close barriers. I can talk with Palestinians, I can talk with settlers, I can talk just about anybody except for the ultra religious, because they won't talk and they won't listen at all. So the main thing is to create a safe space, to be honest, to be authentic, to be curious, and to listen. Before I speak, listen.
Thank you, Aura. Thank you so much for that. And, you know, one question. So what do we do when their human rights violations are acute, when, you know, do we expect these practices to be usable, you know, in the West Bank, where Palestinian residents are really living under that boot of oppression with big human rights violations? And I know that there are trauma and security issues for all people in that land, but how do we implement them when the trauma is current and ongoing? How do we approach that from a peace builder perspective? And sorry if I'm speaking too quickly. English.
Okay. I want to say a word about trauma, though. Maybe we'll start there.
Okay.
we both work a lot with trauma, and we're learning a lot about trauma. Anybody who wants to learn about trauma, I highly recommend listening to Thomas Hubel, who talks about collective trauma. In the second Lebanese war, I was living in the Galilee and my son was 12. And he was far from home when it started. And he was like a half hour away at a friend's house. And I said, oh my God, the sirens are going, missiles are coming. And my son is a half hour away from me. And you know, like any lioness mother, I got into my car, drove there, got my son, put him back in the car, and on the way back, I see in the hills of Tzfat, I see a smoke, and I listen, and I hear terrible noises, and I look at my son, and he's being so brave, and I know that I'm being so brave, and we're going to do this, and we're really, you know, tough, and that same instant, I just had this flash of understanding that what we're doing right now is we're putting on our armor, and we might never be able to take that off. And that's, I think, that the trauma and the post-trauma that we all live with this Itaf story in the beginning from the second Intifada, it's the same thing. We live with these situations and we put on our armor and we get through them and we don't know how to take off that armor anymore. And it's like living with blinders. From that moment on, we can only see in very, very narrow directions. And we live to protect ourselves. We see ourselves as victims. We see ourselves as overcoming our victimhood, maybe, but we always see an enemy, and we don't know how to get close to people anymore. And of course, it's not just one person. We're living in a sea of trauma, as Thomas Hubel says it, you know. We're born into a sea of trauma. And this trauma goes over generations and generations. The Palestinians are living the trauma because the Jews have had, you know, tens of generations of trauma before them and didn't know what to do with it and just threw it on somebody else. Basically, we don't know how to learn the lessons that we have to learn because we're so traumatized. The Jews do not see themselves as conquerors of Arabs. The Jews see themselves as victims that finally found a safe place. And oh no, this place isn't safe either. This is the Jewish mentality. How do we get over that? So when Jews speak to Palestinians, they see that they're all victims. They don't see that, hey, we're victimizing somebody else. We have to stop this. We have to stop our own trauma so that we can stop passing it on. So it's just something that's like sitting there with me.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Aura.
Aura. Yeah. And it's what I remember, like it's for the Palestinian, like after the 48 disaster, it's happened. And also like all my family, they are refugees in Syria. And the people after that, they didn't like talk about their trauma and they was afraid. And even they didn't talk about the disaster. They didn't talk about the Nakba. And all the trauma stay there and it's going from generation to generation and it's collective trauma. And like in the last, like after 76, the land day, people, they start to be aware and they are like talking about the disaster and talking about the Nakba. Like I remember my mother, she told me when it's like in 48, the children and the women, they are hide in the Mount Tabor. In the Mount Tabor, they have a church. And the church, they hide the children and the women. And my grandma, she didn't leave the home and she stayed in the garden and she hid in the storage. And I hear this story, like when I was in a 67 in the Second World, she said, I will, and also the people, they still have the trauma and they are afraid to have to them the same thing what happened in 48. And I was 9 years old, and then the children and the women, we hide in the cave in the neighborhood, and the man, they went outside like to define or to the field, the man. And my grandma, she says, I will do like what I did in 48. I will hide in the storage. And believe me, also, when this is like a still in when I talk about it, like still bring me like the stress and the fear. But we have people, they need like to do like healing of collecting healing a trauma. And this is like what we do like with the what I'm doing with the capacitar. It's like a healing, give people tools how really to release from the trauma and stress. And since I start, and it's ongoing process. It's not like it's easy like to talk about it, and it's to see where I am now, but it's ongoing process, and to be all the time in aware in what's happened, and also aware about the feeling, because it's in the reality, it's no peace, really. And how we continue to be in, to have the hope. And for me, if I lose the hope, I cannot continue. And I never lost the hope, and always like to have hope for peace. If it doesn't happen now in my life, maybe in the future, just I'm sowing the seeds.
Thank you. And, you know, I noticed with your work, so you, Itaf, you know, it's D1, the way of counsel, that communication method for collective healing and personal healing. And then also capacitar, which is, could you share a little bit more about what capacitar is and how peace starts from within? Because I know that, you know, our attendees at this webinar all care very much about Israel, Palestine, and the Holy Land. And my guess is that this group of people that is listening to us feel the fatigue and exhaustion. I always tell people, if you're working for peace in Israel, Palestine, it's a marathon race. It is not a sprint. So how do we sustain ourselves so that we don't just tune it out, turn it off, stay in the home, like, you know, but continue to do the work? How do we find the peace within? And does capacitar or other methods play a role? So how important is it to find peace within, and how do you do that in your practice?
First of all, the peace, it start, like I say, is like with myself, and to be like to open my heart and to practice like a patient and compassion. And this is the way of the counsel. And other method, the capacitar, it started in 2006 when I was in Santa Barbara with the same thing, like also Aura, she was there. We was together with the Beyond Words, and also Shefa, she invited us, and we did counsel in Agora Hill in 2006. And it's coming, the founder of this organization, her name Pat Kane, she is a psychologist. And when I think when they start the war in Rwanda, and she was there, and she realized like people, when they have disaster, they need many healer and many psychologists. And then this method, it's give people tools how they can use it. Like she took many tools and they make it simple, and put all these tools in a basket, and you can teach it to the people, as we call it popular education. Like anyone can learn it and can use it when you have, this is tools. It doesn't solve the problem, but it's help us how to deal when we have like a disaster or when we have a problem, how to deal and to solve with this problem in a safe way, and to be also clear, not like a be stressful. And the same thing, it's like a daily practice, like a Tai Chi, acupuncture, acupressura, holding finger, handle touch, EFT, emotional freedom technique. And if people, they want to learn about it, also in my website, it's written there, itafawad.com, and also the Capacitar. Yeah, if someone interested in, I can say more about it. And like I say, it's like first of all, to open your heart, like for the peace, and to practice. And this is a practice.
Thank you. Thank you, Itaf. And I'm just going to put now in the chat your two emails. Itaf and Aura have Hebrew language websites and Facebook pages. We are just about to launch their English language one. So it is itafawad.com, but it's not launched yet. So for the time being, you can reach out to Aura and Itaf there. We have just 10 minutes left, and we have a question. So thank you, Itaf. The inability to talk to the ultra-religious. Regarding the inability to talk to the ultra-religious, this is coming from Marjorie. Thank you, Marjorie. How do you see that relating to fundamentalist Christians in the United States, or to Trump's solid base? My understanding is that to deprogram people who are cult members is a focus and time-consuming process. And I would like to be able to actually dialogue with people who seem unable to be involved in conversation. So when basic values such as a higher good for every individual differs, how does one bridge that divide? So how do you bridge the divide when you're talking to someone who seems to have total disregard for the higher good? Any thoughts on that?
I'm just wondering about the word higher good, because obviously those people also believe in a higher good. It's a different higher good than what someone else might. I think one of the biggest things that we have to remember when talking to anybody is that we're like 99% the same. You know, like they talk about our DNA. It's like we're really the same, and our differences are so minute, and they can change worlds, those differences, but the most of us are the same. One of the things when I work with women, I love working with women, is that we always find how much we have in common as women, as mothers, as daughters. Even when our traditions are very, very different, we still have these kind of traditions. We have our issues with our mothers and our connection to our mothers. We have our grandmothers, like Itaf's grandmother, my grandmother also. You know, I learned so much from her. So first of all, to try to find those commonalities to create that safe space, that base. And from there, you can say, yeah, we believe differently. People talk about values of that. We do have different values, but they often come from the same needs. So if we can not talk so much about values, but talk about our needs, what are my needs? You know, and my need is to feel safe. My need is to you know, make sure my kids get through school. My needs are this, my needs are that. And we might discover we have so much more in common than we're separate. Itaf and I were just working this year with a group of Palestinian and Israeli women in the Jerusalem area. And they were so different. Their lives were different. Their bases were so different. And it took time, and it took a lot of, they were very hesitant, but slowly and surely they wove together a circle that is just beautiful. And today they're creating projects together. And it's one of the things that makes me most excited and most Yes, we have hope. If a group like this, and this was happening while there were really scary things happening in Jerusalem. There were stabbings and everybody was suddenly afraid, and these women got together.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
they discovered their commonalities, even though they had grown up differently. They could see each other from far away from their porches, but they lived in different worlds. But yes, they could cross that divide. And if they can cross that divide, then I don't know about anyone, but most people can. And we're talking about most people here.
Mhm. Yeah, especially about this project, really, it happened in the hard time, what's happened in Jerusalem, and it was a meeting one day after there was hard day. It was killing from both sides. I couldn't believe they will meet me as a facilitator, and I was really hesitate, and it's happened. And also the Israeli women, they coming to the Palestinian place, and I believe, like Aura, she said, like when we really build the trust and also a practice, like to open the heart and to see each other as a human being without any, like in the beginning, like we broken the barrier with like just meeting to meet without like a political thing. And even after that, when we really have like a foundation, and then we can talk for everything after that, like just we bring them together. And the same thing we did. First of all, we do 2 meeting uninational, just to practice way of the council, just to tell us stories from our experience, to give them like this way of communication. And then after that, we bring them together. Like me, I did with the Palestinian, Aura with the Israeli, and then we bring them together. And now they are continue. They have great project in the hard time. This is the work. This is the challenge, to continue when we really have a hard time.
I think if we can convince each other or ourselves that we are more than just our beliefs, then we have a place to start. I work with ultra-religious women. I in another hat that I wear, I teach sustainability. And I've often worked with very ultra-religious women, not so much, but also families, to teach sustainability, because they know that this earth holds us all, and if we don't treat it well, it won't, it will fall apart, or we won't be able to live with it, or climate change and all the things that we discussed. And they accepted me. They're willing to listen to me and learn from me, even though they don't usually learn from people who are not ultra-religious, and the men don't usually learn from women, past a certain age. But they're willing to do it because they know that this is a place that's important for all of us. So find those commonalities, and then we can go forward step by step.
Thank you, Itaf and Aura. As you said, if they can do it in Jerusalem when it's really, really bad, we can do it here. We can do it in Los Angeles. We can do it in San Francisco. We can do it in Chicago. We can do it here. We can be peace builders and peacemakers here. So thank you so much for all that you shared with us. It was such an honor to have this conversation today. One quick question, actually, from Shefa. You mentioned, Aura, that anyone who wants to learn about trauma, you had a recommendation for someone to listen to or talk. Could you tell me that? I'll put it in the chat, the name.
The name is Thomas Hubel. He's Austrian, I believe. T-H-O-M-A-S. Thomas, T-H-O-M-A-S. Hubel, H-U with the 2 dots above the U, B-L. You can find him all over the internet. He's wonderful. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you. Wonderful. And to, learn more about Itaf and Aura, sometimes they do virtual sessions for Westerners. You can email them, stay in contact with them that way. Also, Itaf's website is coming. If you'd like to support their work, you can go to reGenerationeducation.org and make a donation and just put in the dedication that you'd like to support D1 City. Because us here in the United States, we are reading the news every day, haaretz, all this reporting about what's happening in the Holy Land. And what we're not hearing about is this stuff, that there are people all through the land that are doing this peace work, that are continuing. So these are the real deal peacemakers, and they need the support, our support from the United States. So you're welcome to give that support for their work through reGenerationeducation.org. You just press donate, put in the dedication, and we'll make sure it gets to them. So thank you again so much, Aura and Itaf. I look forward to hearing about your work as peacemakers for years to come. And also I'd like to thank the Lisa and Maury Friedman Foundation for sponsoring the speaker series and making this conversation possible. So thank you so much to Lisa and Maury Friedman for sponsoring these essential conversations.
Thank you.
Thank you all. And thank you, Fia.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much. Have a great day, everyone. This conversation will be available on YouTube, and I'll be sending the link to everyone who attended.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you.